Alrighty, folks. Andrew Bobros here. Hey, I want to do a video on Eric Kendricks. I know our boy Phone, one of the loyal viewers of our channel, asked the question on our last live video on Saturday about Eric Kendricks. So, guys, all right, guys, before I do that, I want to talk a little bit about our mock draft episode that we are going to be having on April 16th at 7 p.m. Eastern time. Should be a lot of fun. We're inviting some of the special guests that we've had in the past on our channel to hop on this mock draft. We're kind of working through the format right now, but it should be a lot of fun. We're also planning on doing a live draft episode with some of these same folks as well, too. So it'll be really great. We'll be, doing a lot of cross-pollination with other people's podcasts and so on and so forth. So it should be a lot of fun. So definitely check that one out. I think you guys will definitely enjoy what we have in store for you. Okay, so let's get into Phone's question. And by the way, we all know this is Tom Telesco. He just trolling our channel. And we always like to make that joke here specifically. But it's kind of a two-part question. I'm just going to read the question, and then I'll just give you my thoughts. Great vid. And again, this is our live episode on Saturday. If you didn't check that out, it was pretty nice. I'd love to see a vid about Kendricks and how he can upgrade our lightbox schemes. I feel like he will be way more physical than 49, a.k.a. Drew Tranquil. He's a tackling machine, exactly what we needed, and feel like Staley in the draft, if Staley can get Clancy, if he's there, which I don't think he will be there at 21. I wish he would be, because I'll tell you right now, I would love to have a stud defensive lineman like Clancy, right? I think he's just moving up the draft board so high right now. I think we'd have to trade up to get him. Who knows if we go after him that way? But again, a nice run stopper like an Aaron Donald would be an amazing thing. So let's break down Phone's question real quick, and then I'll go into some of my. Well, let's hear it from the horse's mouth. We're going to talk specifically. We're going to reread Brandon Staley's comments about Kendricks at the owners meeting in Arizona. I believe it was 2 weeks ago. I did a whole video on that as well too, but it's kind of nice to go back and revisit that conversation and discuss Kendricks as a whole. So how would Kendricks upgrade our light box schemes? Now, what Tom Telesco, aka Phone, we all know who you are. Don't act like we don't know who you are. Anyways, the thing is, we run a very light box scheme. Now, in the modern day NFL, typically you run about 6 men in the box, or you go +1, you say 6, you have 5 offensive linemen, you put 6 men in the box to, guess what? Stop the run, right? That's what you do. Brandon Staley does not do that. We run very light fronts. We run 4 and 5s at a time. We run a lot of defensive backs. I don't suspect that changing at all, okay? Now, the reason why I don't suspect that changing is really and truly we are a pass-heavy league. We all know what – specifically our division, right? I mean, you got Patrick Mahomes. The guy's a man. The guy's a gunslinger. I mean, he's arguably the best quarterback in the league right now. And at the end of the day, we need to have a defense that could potentially stop him. But we also got the Bills. We also got, every team in the NFL has their own specific way of playing football. And at the end of the day, it's very difficult to beat those teams. So we run a very light box. Now, how will Kendricks help out with that light box? So we're going to go into specifically what Brandon Staley said about him specifically and how we're going to manage our defense moving forward. Now, I will make one little note. If you listen to Chargers Weekly and you listen to Matt Money Smith does think that we're going to be running 5-man fronts pretty much all season. I don't know that we're going to do anything much more different than that. But the nice thing about Kendrick specifically is that he fits very well in that system. So we're going to run mostly 1 linebacker sets. So maybe 5 men on the line and 1 linebacker. So that's technically a 6-man front. So if we think it's a running game, that will probably be what we'll running play with. It'll probably be the fronts we'll be running. They call it a bear front, or they call it, there's all different ways you want to call it, but you usually go tight with your defensive lineman, then you have your 2 edge rushers setting the edge, and then you just forcing it up at the middle, right? And that's what you typically do. Kendricks is very good at that, right? So let's just go into what Brandon Staley specifically says about Eric Kendricks compared to Drew Tranquil, because he really lays it out 100% here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the PFF grades of the best linebackers. They did a whole article. It's this awesome article regarding linebackers and their PFF grades. Now, again, I'm not a huge fan of PFF. I actually think a lot of their grading is a little bit off. I think it feels somewhat biased to me. So I sort of struggle with these grades. But again, it's something to look at and understand why some of these people are getting grades. So we can maybe speak for more generalities on those numbers and the grades that they're giving them, and just see where even Drew Tranquil steps up on that list compared to Eric Kendricks, right? And we'll go from there. So, all right, without further ado, let's see what Brandon Staley says. Now, I was going to play the video, but I didn't really want to do the video. I feel like kind of reading is a little bit easier to sort of glean information. I didn't want to start and pause the video. But again, what does this mean? Oh, one little funny side note, by the way. This is actually hilarious before we talk about Kendricks. Kendricks is actually going to be running the number 6 this year. Well, who is he going to be playing next to? K9. Y'all know Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure? 69s, dudes. Anyways, I thought it was pretty hilarious. So our linebackers are going to be number 69. Pretty hilarious. I know. I got a dirty mind. Whatever. Make a comment down below. So the addition of Kendricks. So the Chargers essentially swapped out starting linebackers, Kendricks for, and then let Drew Tranquil walk to the Chiefs. And it was a 1-year deal. I don't even think it was that much money, but and you guys all know that there's been a lot of shade Drew is throwing out at the Chargers organization because of this. And and again, look, it sucks. Drew Tranquil was a very good linebacker, did a very good job for us last season, but he had his moments of weakness, right? So this is interesting. So Staley said the decision was made not because of Tranquil, but because Kendricks became available when he was released by the Vikings. There is something to be said about, again, going back to Phone's question regarding the light boxes, right? Drew Tranquil had a great season. Arguably, it was by far his best season of the year, right? But the problem was, he had flashes of brilliance. I also don't think he was really helping K9 become a better linebacker. I think there was some weird conflicts that were happening there. Now, again, also Drew Tranquil was wearing the green dot. I think there were some arguable calls that I don't think he did well on the defensive side of the ball. We could break it down a lot of videos, but he played good, not great, in my opinion. Statistics-wise, he did very well. Now, let's talk more about Kendricks and Drew Tranquil and just hear it from the horse's mouth, if you will, right? Because Phone asked specifically about light boxes. How does Kendricks fit in the light box scheme? Okay, so let's just talk about that. Again, I'm giving you a lot of background information because it makes a lot of sense as to why we went with Kendricks and let Drew Tranquil walk. So it was more about the opportunity to onboard Eric Kendricks, Staley said. Very appreciative of Drew. Thought Drew played really well for us, and I wish him all the luck in Kansas City. Now, again, he's gotten tons of shade recently. Drew's not happy that we let him walk. But again, at the end of the day, according to Staley, this is who he wanted. Now, you have to remember Brandon Staley has a very specific vision on his defense, and Kendricks fits in his vision better. We're going to go in a little bit more detail into why when we start reviewing PFF ratings and grades and so on and so forth. But let's see specifically what Brandon Staley says. Now, again, I promise you Brandon Staley doesn't look at PFF grades and go, okay, well, he's the number 1 linebacker in the league. Let's pay him number 1 linebacker money. I promise you he's not looking at that. He has his own way of grading and looking at players and making decisions. So what I'm going to show you with PFF is not going to be as relevant as what you're going to be hearing from Brandon Staley in this specific instance. It's a tough part of the position, seeing people that you care about, move on. But I think it's more about the opportunity to add what we feel like is one of the best linebackers in the NFL, a guy that I know a lot about, a guy that really fits well. We're trying to go defensively. I feel like he can bring a lot to our defense in the middle of it. Okay. This is really the crux of the conversation. He's an upgrade in the middle of the field. Okay. And we could talk about that all day around, where linebackers are, what they do, what they don't do. And again, it's a very unsung position nowadays, right? Because most of the time nobody cares about linebackers. Everyone's they're just in the middle of the field. Who cares? But they're very important, right? Because they're stuffing the run. They're trying to break up lanes. A lot of times they have to cover, guess what? Tight ends. Tight ends are very tough covers. We got a really good one in our division, right? We got Eric Kelsey. So, again, it's a really interesting situation. And again, the guy that really fits in, we're trying to do defensively. Now, again, Matt Money Smith really talked a lot about this. We're probably going to have 6 backs. We're going to be more dime coverage. We're going to be nickel and dime most of the time all season. I promise you, that's all we're going to be doing. Again, I do think we're probably going to get a cornerback at some point, maybe even a safety drafted. There's going to be a lot of, defensive backs on this team. The reason being is we want to get interceptions, but we want our front line as stout as possible. Kendricks helps with that, right? Because we can run lighter boxes with a good middle linebacker that makes good decisions. See, arguably, Drew Tranquil did not make great decisions at certain points, right? He didn't read the play well, and there were issues. Now, Kendricks, a former All-Pro, Pro Bowler, 900 plus career tackles, an elite player against the run and the pass. I can't say that about Drew Tranquil. As much as we like Drew Tranquil had a great season, but he's not Kendricks. He's just not Kendricks, right? Staley described what kind of pedigree Kendricks will bring to the Bolts. He's one of the most complete linebackers in the last decade. Staley said, you're talking about 5 to 7 players that are as complete as a linebacker he is. His instincts, his key diagnose, his ability to communicate, his energy in the middle, a true commander. Now, again, the argument could be, well, wasn't that Drew Tranquil? Yes, it was last year, right? But we didn't have much of a choice. Kenneth Murray really didn't do much. He didn't step up. He's not a vocal leader. Arguably, he'll probably be released this next season, after this season, I should say. But look, I just don't see, him doing a whole lot. Kendricks, on the other hand, is the guy that he clearly wants. I mean, this is a gushing, diagnosis of a person right here. I mean, 5 to 7 players as complete a linebacker as he is. Okay, so clearly it's a tackling machine, sideline to side, in the box, physical. He's one of the best passing game linebackers in the last decade. Staley added he comes from a pattern match scheme in Mike Zimmer, which is how we play. So not only is he a great linebacker, he runs a very similar type system that Mike Zimmer runs in defense, for the Vikings. And to say that Brandon Staley runs a difficult defense is not an understatement. They really do run a very different defense. If you recall, when we played the Dolphins, I go back to that press conference, and I could pull it up. I was actually going to pull it up, and I just kind of didn't want to do that. But if you recall, the Niners played the Dolphins. The Niners shut down the Dolphins. This is when the Dolphins were hot as hell last season. We came in, we beat the Dolphins, and everyone's like, oh, you just copied what the Niners did. Brandon Staley was aggrably frustrated with that question. The reason being is we run a pattern match scheme. It's basically a hybrid man zone. It is certain situations you're going to play man. Other situations you're playing zone. So as a defensive player, you have to look at the play and make a decision. What am I doing? And you have to read it correctly. So you have to be smart. You have to understand the way Brandon Staley sees it. He calls a play for a specific reason. So clearly, Brandon Staley says it's a very similar type of defense that we're running here for the Chargers as the Vikings. Very exciting to see that, right? Obviously, he'll fit right in. So again, to answer Fofon's question, he fits in perfectly according to Brandon Staley, right? In the scheme that he's running, the light boxes that he's running, everything that he's doing, and he's a tackling machine. He has been a fantastic tackling machine. Also, it helps at special teams. Ryan Ficken knows him from Minneapolis. Again, best friend over there. He knows him. Jonathan Gannon. Look, clearly they know who this guy is. We feel like this guy's got a lot of stuff that championship defenses are made of. I'm really, really excited to team up with him. There's something to be said about a first-time head coach that has these players that they just put high on a pedestal, right? We know he's a defensive-minded head coach. He's played offense. He was quarterback, of course. But when you're a defensive player and you see a guy like this come available, you're like, oh, man, I want to have him. It's like anything else. Like we buy sports cards. Oh, I got to have this Herbert rookie. I got to have this LT. I got to have this Junior Seau card, right? To some degree, that's kind of what Brandon Staley's doing here too, right? Clearly, he has loved this guy forever, but the ability to team up with him became available. Our player from last year became less important because we now have an opportunity to team up with a lifelong goal of his to be working with this guy. So there's some bias there, guys. We're all human beings. We make some biased choices. Now, this is interesting. Again, Drew Tranquil, I believe, was running the green dot at the end of last season. Final notes. Staley said the decision hasn't been made whether or not Kendricks will wear the green dot, called defensive plays. But that is a natural part of his game. Okay. He will play and he will use the green dot next season. I promise you that's going to be what he's going to do. Now, clearly they're going to try and make sure he knows what he's doing. And, I'm sure there's going to be some sort of aptitude test around, do you really understand my defense? Again, we are going to be running a lot of defensive backs. I think a lot of nickel, a lot of dime. So we might see a lot of one linebacker formations, right? So again, depending on injuries, depending on what we see, I think that's going to be a big part of what we're going to see upcoming this next season. So very, very interesting conversation. So let's go into the linebacker rating specifically and talk a little bit about, where does Kendricks line up, and then I'll wrap up the video. Now, again, I'm not a huge fan of PFF. Okay, I just really am not, right? I just, I was going to go through the whole spreadsheet. It just gets kind of annoying. You look at sacks, tackles, all this all garbage. I'd rather just kind of read it out and then just give an idea. Now, it does give a kind of a nice little summation of, the linebacker role, right? But let's see who the elite few are on this list, okay? Right now, we got Fred Warner, Darius Leonard, DeMarco Davis. Oh, wow. Eric Kendricks, number 4, Minnesota Vikings. Okay, so let's just read this paragraph right here. The best linebackers in today's leagues are league coverage players. They can also affect the game in other ways. Warner's transformation effect of the 49ers defense became smarter or a starter. It hasn't been able to maintain the lead every season. His impact on the field is obvious. Now, let's just go specifically to what Kendricks brings to the table as far as being the elite few. Kendricks is one of the game's best coverage linebackers, okay? Able to consistently squeeze throwing lanes and make plays on the ball once it's in the air. So I'm going to focus on this specifically, right? We all know line to sideline. He can also play coverage very well, and he can stop the run. Guys, arguably Eric Kendricks is our guy. And again, part of the reason why I even did this video is I kept thinking to myself, man, I really like Drew Tranquil. I kind of wish we had kept him. After reading everything that I've read, and by the way, I've read more articles than this. This is really just kind of the article that I wanted to make relevant for this video. But bottom line, he's going to help us cover, the folks that are going to be in the middle of the field. And guess who that is? Kelsey, right? We all know Kelsey is the guy that's going to be, carving us up twice the season, right? Look, he's going to be, if we could stop Kelsey, eliminate him, we could do a lot more on defense. Consistently squeeze throwing lanes and make plays once the ball is in the air, right? That is huge, guys. Huge. And again, that's not something Drew Tranquil was good at. In fact, he was horrible at that for the most part. I mean, he tried, right? But he was not that guy, right? Kendricks has always been that guy. He's done a very good job of shutting down people, right? You got Bobby Wagner, Devontae David. Okay, so let's kind of go through the list and see where Drew Tranquil even sits, right? Aging elite. I'm glad we didn't get Bobby Wagner. Devontae David, no way. Micah Parsons, that guy's just a freak of nature. Really and truly, that guy's just, I would love to have Micah Parsons. I mean, that guy's just unbelievable. Devondre Campbell, Packers. Best of the best, Alexander Johnson, Matt Milano, Zach Cunningham, Shaq Thompson, Carolina Panthers. All great. These are all great linebackers, right? Young and ascending. Nick Bolton, David Long, Cole, Aziz Ashari, Logan Wilson. Where's Drew Tranquil? Josie Jewell, Denzel Perriman. I still love Denzel Perriman. I just love the way he plays, but he's a great run stuffer. That's kind of really his forte. Roller coaster ride, Blake Martinez, Miles Jack, Jalen Brown, Kyle Van Noy. We know him. I suspect he's coming back, guys. I suspect he's coming back. I think he's sitting out for a little while. Basically, my take on him is that he'll get signed after the draft. And depending on how the draft shakes out, we're going to get more serious with him about bringing him back, maybe give him a little bit more money. Anthony Walker, Kaiser White. Let's see where we're at. Oh, and we don't even have Drew Tranquil on this list. The argument can be made, guys, and I'll wrap on this because, again, I don't want to beat a dead horse here. The argument can be made that Drew Tranquil had a season, and he did. He had a fantastic season. But clearly, he doesn't fit 100% of what Brandon Staley wants to do, right? He knows if he can have a linebacker that can shut down a tight end like Kelsey, or at least get close to the guy, bat down a couple passes, a few things, stop the run, have a little more speed, good things will happen. PFF 100% agrees that he's one of the best linebackers. Every single linebacker ranking I saw, he was the guy. And it was the intangibles, the things that we could not really quantify, pass breakups, different things like that. He does a very good job of being an elite linebacker in the league. So it's a little hard to see somebody go like a Drew Tranquil because we really like him and we know what he did and we know what he can do. And, and you see the Kaiser White on there. You say, well, you know what? Maybe Kaiser White steps up and becomes that guy next year. You know what? He could, right? But at the end of the day, Brandon Staley wants to win now. And right now, this team is built to win now, right? So when you can go get an opportunity to get a guy like an Eric Kendricks, it makes the decision real simple, guys. And we're not paying a lot of money for him. I mean, we are paying quite a bit, but at the end of the day, he's a fantastic linebacker, arguably one of the best in the league. So, as hard as it is to say, it's been an upgrade. According to Brandon Staley and according to PFF, an upgrade. And he will work very well in our lightbox scheme that Phone specifically wanted me to highlight, right? Because better pass coverage, better stopping the run, more sideline awareness, a better leader, clearly. I mean, gushing reviews from Brandon Staley at this point. So, Phone, I hope that answers your question. And guys, like and subscribe to